Hi folks, it's the one and only Florida Man here. Today I'm bringing you commentary on the game Audacity and Honor, which I played in summer and fall of this year on Play Diplomacy. I joined in 1906, taking over the surrendered Russian power, and this is what the map looked like when I took over. I'm not going to provide history on the game. If you're interested, you can look it up, but at the time I started, this is what it looks like, and the surviving players other than me are about ready to declare a draw. As soon as I join, I shoot that down. And then I start messaging like a maniac, trying to get other players to give me an update on what has been going on, what the diplomatic situation is. I thought the map looks pretty odd, and I wanted to get a feel for how that happened and who was working with whom. What I gathered was that Italy had an existing alliance with England and Austria, but Austria had basically gone silent and stopped cooperating. Germany had previously been allied with England, but stabbed England, so they were fighting. Germany and Russia had a long-standing non-aggression pact, faithfully observed for years. Italy and Germany had been friendly until somewhat recently as well, but Italy and England were now on the same side after the breakup of the English-German alliance. And Austria was not a particularly good communicator, and he was unfriendly from my very first message, so I sort of wrote him off. What I achieved diplomatically in that initial season was convincing Germany I was going to keep up the non-aggression pact, establishing a rapport with England, and getting Italy to agree that even if he wasn't sure about stabbing Austria, he would at least remain neutral in my fight with Austria. I also agreed to support Italy into Denmark. When fall 1906 processed, I was surprised to see that in addition to the move against Germany, Italy slid into Serbia. That was a surprise, and it made me a little worried. Italy had units all over the place already, and as far as I was concerned, he was stronger than I wanted him to be. In fact, I reasoned that as he was the board leader, he made a credible solo threat. Therefore, during the build phase, I worked to convince England and Germany that Italy presented a solo threat, a serious solo threat. I built armies rather than any units in St. Pete, and I successfully made up with Germany. The result of all that hot air was that in spring 1907, I supported Germany in retaking Denmark, England snuck into the mid-Atlantic Ocean, and all of my units moved toward my southern front with Italy and Austria. My unit in Vienna tapped his unit in Bohemia, preventing Italy from seizing Munich, which I think really would have made Italy look like a solo threat, whereas really he was arguably not quite there when I raised the initial alarm. Italy didn't realize what was going on until the season processed, so he continued with his moves attacking Austria and Germany, which I think just cemented who was on which side of this war. Italy wrote to me, apparently outraged afterward, and said, "I see how you reward those who turn against their allies and support you." I took that rather seriously, as a statement of his bitterness about the stab, and a reminder not to let Italy live or even try to re-ally with him. Looking back on it now, I wish I could have said something like, "Rewarded as a traitor deserves." During games, though, I usually try not to say things like that would inevitably embitter the other players. Fall 1907, I take my first center off of Italy, as well as securing 2 Austrian centers, and Austria takes back the Turkish center that Italy had stolen from him. If Italy had been a solo threat, this year reduced him to a regional power. However, that fortunately did not undermine the strength of the alliance against him. The other players seemed to just complacently accept my idea that we would take him out and then go for a 3-power draw. Spring 1908, we continued advancing against Italy, and I continued gaining ground against Austria. With fall 1908, I surround the remaining Austrian centers, and with the collapse of Italian strength, I begin to see Germany as my primary threat. In the build phase, both Germany and I build armies, and I decide the best way to make sure I win this game is to attack him before he could potentially attack me. Therefore, in spring 1909, I shift almost all of my units toward the German front after coordinating with him beforehand, so that I knew, to a certain extent, his moves, and I knew he was at least moving a couple of his units away from his homeland. Miraculously, I managed to convince England and Germany after this move that my attack was a precautionary move, a preemptive strike, because with the army builds, I thought Germany might turn on me. And that was a half-truth at best. But if you type your message convincingly enough, you can make it seem plausible. I think it also helped that Germany had stabbed England early on in such a way as to make him seem very untrustworthy. So England was ready to believe that I might have not wanted to trust in Germany's tender mercies. Fall 1909 is a key season, because both England and Germany failed to move against me, despite the aggression of the spring moves and the fact that I am very clearly a solo threat now. England makes an entirely unnecessary convoy to Portugal, wasting moves, and Germany supports himself holding and continues attacking Italy. If England had instead moved the channel to North Sea, he would have been in a much better position to deal with the real threat. Me. Instead, he's a season behind in the race to stop me. Germany could have easily bounced me out of Denmark as well, but because he neglected basic self-defense, I got 2 of his centers instead of 1. With the simultaneous collapse of Austria, and my capture of Greece, as well as the fact that they've not yet tried to get Italy to join them against me, the game is all over except the crying. With the build phase, I get to construct units in all 4 Russian centers, and you can see that positions me very well to inflict the killing blow in the spring. Spring 1910, I seize Norway and move Moscow to St. Pete, which means I can hold Norway for the duration of this game. If England had taken the North Sea in fall 1909, after I made my big move against Germany, then he could have bounced me out of Norway. As things stand, Scandinavia becomes a big, important part of the solo. I take Munich at the same time, but as you see in fall 1910, I do lose Denmark, so I end up with exactly 18 centers. In other words, if I had not taken Norway this year, they might have kept me from the solo. The final board position looks like this. A fairly textbook Russian solo position, I think. It was not my most exciting game, but what I found interesting was how quickly alliances jumped back and forth as soon as I joined, and I also liked that everyone involved in this game was a good sport, and that Germany and England communicated very well. England and Germany both congratulated me in the public press after the game as well. I hope you've enjoyed this brief diplomacy commentary. If so, I hope that will give you reason to like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos. Feel free to make suggestions in the comments for other things you'd like to see. And until next time, Florida Man, out.